My name was Clara Dawson. In my village they used to whisper that I was blessed. Engaged since childhood to Nathaniel Cross, the boy with sharp eyes and a quick smile. They said I was lucky. They didn't see what luck cost. I used to believe love was measured in patience. In small, ordinary sacrifices that, stacked together, built a future worth waiting for. I never realized that patience given too freely can become a noose around your own neck. Nate was the kind of boy people pitied. His father, Martin, had been blind since birth. His mother, Margaret, was left paralyzed after a fall on the cliffs when Nate was only 10. Poverty wrapped around their home like ivy, choking everything inside. Sometimes Nate wandered the village barefoot, stomach hollow, knees shaking as though hunger itself had made a home in his bones. My father, Edward, couldn't bear the sight. He'd send me running to fetch Nate whenever we cooked something special. I still remember those evenings, the way my mother, Helen, would set aside the eggs she normally saved for New Year, or slice into the soft rolls of white bread she had been hoarding. Nate would sit at our table, his eyes glittering, devouring every bite like he was afraid the food might vanish before his fork reached it. Back then I thought he looked at me with gratitude. Now I know better. Hunger can mimic many things, even affection. The elders used to laugh and tease. Those two are destined. Might as well bind them now. I flushed red every time, my heart pounding so hard I couldn't meet Nate's gaze. I mistook my embarrassment for love. And when he kissed me behind the toolshed at 16, clumsy and trembling, I thought I had found my forever. We promised each other everything. We'd take the exams together, leave the village, carve out a new life side by side. But fate, or perhaps my own foolishness, rewrote those vows. When Nate was accepted into university, the village erupted in pride. He was the first college student from our valley. They painted banners, set off firecrackers, even built an arch at the entrance with his name etched in red. The pride of the Cross family. Me. I stayed. Someone had to bathe his paralyzed mother, to guide his blind father to the toilet, to feed them when they refused to eat. Someone had to work, scrubbing laundry until my hands blistered, hauling sacks of grain under a scorching sun, peeling garlic until the smell soaked into my skin, all so Nate could pay his tuition. At first his letters came often. Long pages about professors, libraries, and city lights brighter than stars. He always ended with, "Clara, wait for me. When I graduate we'll marry." I clutched those letters like scripture. But then the letters slowed. A month without one. Then the words became shorter, colder. Still, I forgave him because what is love if not forgiveness repeated until it blinds you? Meanwhile, Margaret's tone changed. At first she praised me, calling me her daughter-in-law in spirit. Later, when Nate wrote less, she scolded me endlessly. "Scrub harder. Don't waste the soap. Stop daydreaming, useless girl." I swallowed it all. Because I thought, if I endure this, one day he'll come back for me. Then one scorching summer the news came. An accident, they said. A truck on a mountain road. Nate was gone. I screamed until my throat bled. I fainted and woke to an empty room, his absence pressing down like a stone. I thought my life had ended with his. But it hadn't. Not yet. Instead I carried on, for his family. I cooked for Martin when his hands trembled too badly to hold a spoon. I scrubbed Margaret's bed sores until my nose went numb to the stench. I patched their roof when the rains came, bent my back under buckets of water, and told myself this was what a dutiful fiancé did. 1 year bled into 5. 5 into 20. By the time both Cross parents died, one after the other, my own parents were long gone, their faces worn down by shame and gossip. People never forgot to remind them that their daughter had given away her life too cheaply. My black hair had turned silver. My shoulders stooped. My hands were gnarled from work. I was alone. Completely, utterly alone. The day I saw him again was ordinary at first. The sky gray, the air heavy with the smell of damp earth. I was standing by the village monument, leaning on my cane when the car pulled up. Sleek, foreign, gleaming like a creature from another world. And out stepped Nathaniel Cross. He wasn't the boy I remembered. His hair was streaked with gray, his suit pressed, his shoes shining. His eyes still held that fox-like glint, but now it was sharpened, polished by power. For a moment his gaze flicked over me, this bent, withered woman at the gate. Something unreadable flashed in his eyes. Then he turned to the young girl beside him, his granddaughter, and said with solemn authority, "Emily, remember this. A woman must respect herself. Don't be like her, throwing herself at a man, shamelessly wasting her life. My heart stopped. Beside him, his wife, Valerie Hart, daughter of the county mayor, covered her mouth and laughed, her jeweled hand glinting in the light. That was when I understood. He hadn't died in any accident. Back then he had already secured Valerie. I was nothing but a fool he tricked, a scapegoat to raise his family while he climbed the ladder into wealth. All my years of sacrifice, my body, my future, my very soul, were nothing but ashes to him. Rage, sharper than any blade, surged through my veins. My cane trembled in my grip. "You heartless bastard!" I shouted, the words tearing from my throat. I swung with all the strength my old bones could muster. For one glorious heartbeat, I saw shock flicker across his face. But Nate was still strong. He caught my blow, shoved me back with ease. The world spun. My body slammed against the cold stone pillar of the monument. Pain exploded through me, fiery and final. My vision blurred, narrowing to a pinprick of light. The last thing I heard was Valerie's laughter, sweet and cruel, ringing in my ears. And then, darkness swallowed me whole. When I opened my eyes, the air was heavy with the scent of corn stalks and damp earth. Moonlight spilled through the leaves, silvering Nate's face as he leaned over me. For a heartbeat I thought I was still dreaming. The last memory I had was of blood pooling at the base of the stone monument, of Nate's sneer as he called me shameless, of the world going black around me. But here he was, 17 again, his eyes gleaming with hunger and arrogance. My body was younger, smaller, still untouched by the years of labor and grief that had once weighed me down. My chest seized. Oh, this couldn't be. "Clara," he whispered, his hands sliding to my waist. "Don't be afraid. I'll take care of you. Once we're together, I'll make sure you never suffer. I'll marry you, bring you to college, we'll never be apart." The words hit me like a thunderclap. The same words. The same lies. I remembered too well how I had believed him the first time. How I had given myself to him in that field, thinking it was love, thinking he was different. And how that single mistake had been the chain that bound me to decades of humiliation. But this time, my hand flew before I even thought. Crack. The sound of my palm meeting his cheek echoed through the night. Nate stumbled back, his hand clutching his face, eyes wide with disbelief. "See, Clara? What are you?" I sat up, my breath sharp, my heart pounding not with fear but with fury. "Don't touch me." His face twisted, confusion giving way to anger. "Are you crazy? Do you know what you're throwing away? I'm offering you everything." I laughed bitterly, the sound shocking even to my own ears. It was low, cold, nothing like the meek girl I had once been. "Everything? You mean lies? Chains? Misery dressed up as promises?" He stiffened, clearly unsettled. "Claire, you've always loved me. Don't act like this. You need me." "No," I said, rising to my feet. The corn rustled around me as I pushed past him, my hands steady, my voice steel. "It's you who needed me. My blood. My life. My years. But not this time. Never again." For a moment he stood frozen, the great Nate Miller, village prodigy, struck dumb by the girl he thought he owned. When he finally found his voice, it came out low and dangerous. "You'll regret this. No one will want you. No one else will take you in." I turned back just enough for the moonlight to catch my face. "Better alone than chained to you." Then I walked away, each step tearing me further from the nightmare of my past life. Inside, my heart thundered with equal parts terror and exhilaration. I had done it. I had defied him. And as the wind stirred the corn stalks, I made a vow in the silence of my soul. This life would be mine. Nate would never ruin me again. When I left the cornfield, the night wrapped around me like a shroud. My heart pounded, not with shame as it had in my last life, but with something sharp and electric: defiance. For the first time in 2 lifetimes, Nathaniel Cross had not gotten his way. I walked quickly, the dirt path crunching beneath my shoes, the familiar outline of our small house growing clearer in the moonlight. I slowed as I neared the gate. Inside, I could hear my parents' voices, the low rumble of my father's laugh, the soft cadence of my mother humming as she worked. I swallowed hard. How many years had it been since I'd last heard that sound? In my past life, my parents had grown old under the shadow of my shame. Their hair turned white too soon, their backs bent from carrying burdens that should never have been theirs. I buried them both with my own hands, guilt heavy in my chest. But now I had been given them back. When I pushed open the door, the scent of chicken broth hit me. My mother, Helen, looked up from the stove with a smile. "Claire, you're just in time. The chicken's ready." My father, Edward, sat at the table, puffing on his pipe, his eyes crinkling with warmth. "Didn't I say our girl has good fortune? Food comes to the table the moment she walks in." The sight of them, so alive, so full of simple joy, shook something loose in me. My eyes stung. Before I could stop myself, I rushed forward and buried my face into my mother's shoulder. She stiffened, startled. Then laughing, she looked over at my father. "Oh my, our daughter's acting spoiled today." Her arms tightened around me anyway. "Are you too tired from school? If it's too much, you can take a break. Don't push yourself so hard." Their gentleness broke me. Hot tears spilled down my cheeks as I whispered, "No, I'm not tired. I just love you both so much." They exchanged puzzled glances. My father chuckled awkwardly, thinking I was just being dramatic. But I knew the truth. In my last life I had failed them. This time I would not. As we ate, my mother casually said, "Clara, after dinner, go fetch Nate. He should eat too." I froze, chopsticks halfway to my mouth. In my last life I had always saved the best food for him. The eggs, the buns, even the meat meant for my family, I had passed it to him without a thought. And what had he given in return? Betrayal. I set my chopsticks down firmly. "I'm not calling him." Both my parents stared at me in surprise. My father frowned. "But you've always liked him, haven't you?" I forced a smile, though my voice was steady. "I was blind back then. I see clearly now. We don't need to share what little we have with outsiders." They were shocked into silence. I didn't explain further. How could I tell them that the boy they pitied would one day mock me as shameless? Inside, I made a vow. This time my family's hard-earned meals would stay on our table. The next day at school I saw Grace Chin. She stood by the classroom door, hands on her hips, glaring at me. "Clara, you shameless girl. Sneaking into the cornfield with Nate last night. I should report you to the teacher." In my last life, Grace had been a thorn in my side. She liked Nate too, and because he chose me she had often mocked and competed with me. I had seen her as an enemy. But later, when Nate died, and I was left to care for his family alone, it was Grace who had slipped me a crumpled $10 bill when she thought no one was watching. And after she married a crippled man in a neighboring village, after she was beaten and driven to despair, she ended her life in the river. Remembering that, I didn't feel anger. Only sorrow. Before she could say more, I stepped forward and hugged her. Grace froze. What's gotten into you?" I laughed through the lump in my throat. "Grace, don't waste your energy on Nate. There are men outside this mountain 1,000 times better than him. Let's go see them together." She pulled back, staring at me like I had grown a second head. "You've lost your mind, Clara." But I only smiled. Because I knew, this time I would not let her fall. Throughout the day, Grace kept sneaking glances at me, clearly unsettled. When I handed her my study notes, she frowned. "What's this for?" "Because we're going to take the exams together," I said simply. Her mouth fell open. "Together? Do you know how hard it is? Do you think you can even pass?" I met her gaze steadily. "Yes. And so can you." She scoffed, but I saw the flicker of hope in her eyes. In my last life she had fought her parents for the right to sit the exam, even threatening them with a knife. This time she wouldn't have to fight alone. That night, as I lay in bed listening to the crickets outside, I clenched my fists beneath the blanket. This time I wouldn't waste my life on Nate. This time I would pass the exams, leave this village and repay my parents for their love. And I would drag Grace with me into the light, even if I had to fight the entire world to do it. The classroom smelled faintly of chalk and damp wood that morning, a scent I hadn't noticed in years. My desk was still in the same place, second row from the back, near the window where the mountain breeze sometimes carried in the cries of sparrows. I sat down, opened my notebook and breathed deeply. This time I promised myself I would not let anything derail me. But fate, it seemed, was impatient to test me. The buzz started even before she walked in. A transfer student was rare enough in our rural county school, but a transfer in the final year just before exams was unheard of. Whispers swept the room. "The mayor's daughter. She's coming here just to prepare for college." Then she arrived, Valerie Hart. Her uniform was perfectly pressed, her shoes gleaming white. She carried herself like the classroom was already too small for her, her chin tilted slightly upward. When she smiled, it was the kind of smile that didn't need friends. It commanded followers. And of course her seat was placed beside Nate. I saw the way his eyes lit up, the way he puffed his chest as if her very presence elevated him. My stomach clenched, not with jealousy as it had in my past life, but with grim recognition. This was the beginning of the end. At first, Valerie didn't acknowledge me. She laughed at Nate's jokes, borrowed his pen, argued playfully with him over answers. But soon her gaze flicked toward me, sharp and assessing. During a break, as students clustered around her, she leaned back in her chair and said loudly enough for half the class to hear, "Some people really don't know their place. Clinging to men above their station, it's pathetic." Laughter rippled through the room. My name wasn't spoken, but every eye flicked to me. I clenched my pen so tightly it almost snapped. In my past life, those words had sunk into me like hooks. I had lowered my head, swallowed my pride, and told myself it didn't matter. But now my chest burned with defiance. It was only a matter of time before Valerie found her sword arm. Susan Zhang. Susan was big-boned, with broad shoulders and a mean streak a mile wide. She had always looked for someone to bully, and with Valerie's attention on me, she had her target. That evening after self-study, I returned to find my desk soaked in black ink. My textbooks, my notes. Every page was ruined, the ink bleeding across my careful handwriting. My breath caught. Rage surged up like a tidal wave. Susan leaned against the wall, smirking. "So what if I did it? You think anyone cares? You won't get into Tinghua. You're just a village chicken dreaming of being a phoenix." Laughter exploded around the classroom. Someone jeered, "Clara, you'd be better off marrying Nate than wasting ink on books you'll never use." Nate puffed up with pride at that, but one glance from Valerie made him shrink back down, silent. I stared at my ruined desk, then slowly picked up one of the ink-soaked textbooks. My pulse hammered, my hands steady. Without a word, I walked up to Susan and slammed the book into her face. The class gasped. Ink splattered across her nose, her cheeks, her lips. She yelped, stumbling back, hands flying to her face. A thin line of blood trickled from her nose. The room fell silent. I looked around at every single one of them, at the boys still smirking, at the girls whispering, at Nate whose jaw had gone slack. My voice was low but carried, sharp as a whip. "You think my dream is a joke? Fine, Buff. But hear this. I will take the college entrance exam. I will pass. And I don't care who mocks me. But if anyone dares touch my books again, I'll make sure they regret it." I swept my gaze across the room, meeting each pair of eyes until they dropped. Valerie slammed her desk, standing tall. "This is a classroom, not a place for violence. Look at Susan, you should apologize." I turned my gaze on her, the girl who in my last life had stolen Nate, who had been handed every advantage I had bled for. "Oh, now you care about rules?" I sneered. "Where were you when she destroyed my books? Or do rules only apply when it benefits you?" Her eyes narrowed, her lips curling. "Who saw her do that?" "No one. All they saw was you being violent." The room went quiet. Everyone knew she was the mayor's daughter. No one dared contradict her. For a moment, it was as if the entire class was against me. I straightened my back. My voice was calm, even, but every word struck like iron. "You can laugh at me. You can call me a fool. But I will not let any of you drag me down again. I will take the exam. I will leave this village. And one day when you're still stuck here, you'll remember this moment, when you tried to break me and failed." The silence that followed was deafening. Valerie's smile faltered just for a second. Nate stared at me as if seeing me for the first time, something uneasy flickering in his eyes. I turned, walked back to my ruined desk and sat down. My hands shook, but not from fear, from the thrill of finally standing my ground. For the rest of the day the classroom was subdued. No one laughed at me again. Even Susan avoided my gaze, a tissue pressed to her bleeding nose. I knew this wasn't the end. Valerie wouldn't forgive this challenge. Nate wouldn't give up so easily. The road ahead would only get harder. But I had made my declaration. In this life I would not bow. News in a village travels faster than wildfire. By the next morning it seemed everyone already knew what had happened in the classroom. The ink, the slap, my declaration. When I walked down the dirt road towards school, carrying my still damp ruined textbooks. Neighbors glanced at me with open amusement. "There goes Clara Dawson," one man drawled to his friend. "Did you hear? She says she's going to Tsinghua University." Tsinghua. As if any chicken from our coop could fly so high. His companion chuckled, shaking his head. Her parents should stop indulging her. Better to marry her off quickly than waste food on her foolishness. Their words were like stones thrown at my back. But this time I did not lower my head. I walked on, my steps steady, the sun rising behind me. At school, Grace Chen looked troubled. Her eyes darted nervously around the classroom before she pulled me aside. "Clara," she hissed, "my parents heard what you said yesterday. They're furious. They want me to quit school and start working in the fields. They say girls like us will never pass the exam, so why waste money?" Her voice broke on the last word. I remembered too clearly how in my last life, she had begged her family for just one more year. How they had refused. How she had taken up the kitchen knife and threatened to cut herself if they dragged her away. I gripped her shoulders firmly. "Listen to me, Grace. You will not quit. Not this time. We'll fight them together. If they won't pay, I'll share what I have. If they drag you home, I'll come get you myself. You are not alone anymore." Her eyes widened, disbelief and hope warring in her expression. "But, Clara, what if we fail?" "Then we'll fail together," I said fiercely. "But if we succeed, we'll rise together too." That afternoon the schoolyard buzzed with taunts. Word of our determination had reached not just classmates but villagers who gathered at the gate to watch. Valerie Hart stood at the center of it, her arms crossed elegantly, Nate by her side like a loyal dog. She raised her voice deliberately, ensuring everyone could hear. "Clara Dawson thinks she'll enter Tsinghua," she sneered. "Grace Chen too. Two little sparrows dreaming of being phoenixes. Don't make me laugh." The crowd erupted in laughter. Boys mimicked me, clutching fake books to their chests and staggering dramatically. Girls covered their mouths, giggling about how I was embarrassing the female gender. I felt Grace trembling beside me. For a moment anger threatened to choke me. But then I remembered the years I had lived bowed beneath their scorn. I remembered the bitterness of silence. Not this time. I grabbed Grace's hand and raised it high. My voice cut through the laughter, steady and clear. "Yes, we are sparrows. But even sparrows can fly. We will sit the college entrance exam. We will leave this place. And when we do, remember that it was you who mocked us while we fought for our dreams." The crowd hushed. My words echoed against the school walls. Grace's hand trembled in mine, but when I looked at her, her chin was lifted, her eyes blazing. Together we shouted, "We'll pass." Some laughed harder, some jeered louder, but it no longer mattered. In that moment, Grace and I had sealed our oath. That evening we sat together beneath the old elm tree outside the village. Fireflies flickered around us, the warm summer air thick with the smell of grass. Grace whispered, "Do you really believe we can do it?" I turned to her, my heart certain. "Yes. Not because the world believes in us, but because we believe in each other. Promise me, Grace, no matter how hard it gets, we don't give up." She swallowed hard, then nodded. "I promise." We clasped hands, our palms sticky with sweat, and swore beneath the stars that this time we would rise. Of course, Nate and Valerie didn't let it rest. The next day Nate strutted up to me with a smirk. "Clara, stop dreaming. Even if you could pass, who would hire you? Who would marry you after the whole village has seen you slap Susan bloody?" Valerie laughed lightly, looping her arm through his. "Some girls don't know they're meant to be wives, not scholars. Ambition looks ugly on the wrong person." I met their eyes calmly. Better to look ugly reaching for the stars than to look beautiful crawling in the mud. Their smiles faltered just for a heartbeat. At night as I lay in bed, I replayed the scene under the elm tree. Grace's trembling hand in mine. Her whispered promise. In my last life, both of us had been broken by this village. Its gossip, its chains, its smallness. This time we had each other. Let them laugh. Let them mock. I would carry us both into the light. The whispers began to creep closer to my doorstep. At the market, I overheard women muttering as they weighed vegetables. At her age, she should be preparing for marriage, not wasting her parents' money on exams. Exactly. Edward and Helen spoil that girl too much. You'll see, she'll fail and the whole family will be laughed at. When I returned home with the groceries, my mother tried to hide her weary expression, but I saw it. She had heard the whispers too. That evening as we sat around the table she finally spoke. Clara, maybe it's enough. You've studied so hard. If you don't make it, people will mock you even more. Your father and I can't bear to see you humiliated. I reached across the table and took her hand. Mother, I've already been humiliated for an entire lifetime. This time let me try. Even if I fail, at least it will be my failure, not the village's laughter that defines me. Her eyes filled with tears. My father exhaled heavily, puffing his pipe. If this is the path you want, girl, then walk it. Just don't forget your parents' hearts walk with you. I swallowed hard and nodded. I knew my family didn't have money to spare, so I found ways to earn it myself. On weekends I helped Mrs. Lee, the seamstress, with stitching. At dawn I went to the Chin family farm and picked vegetables for a small wage. In the evenings I tutored younger students, drilling them on their times tables under the flicker of a kerosene lamp. Every coin I saved went into a tin box beneath my mattress, not just for my own books but for Grace's as well. Grace tried to protest. Clara, I can't take your money. It's not right. I pressed the tin box into her hands anyway. You promised me under the elm tree. We're doing this together. That means we share everything. She stared at me for a long time before finally whispering, then I'll study so hard I'll make every coin worth it. Her smile that night was small, but it was the first time I saw hope in her eyes instead of fear. Of course, Nate couldn't let me live in peace. One afternoon as I hauled a sack of corn from the mill, sweat dripping down my back, Nate and his friends appeared. Valerie was with them, her parasol tilted just so, shielding her from the sun. Well, look at this, Nate said loudly, his voice carrying down the road. Clara Dawson, the future scholar of Tinghua, reduced to hauling corn like a mule. Laughter rang out. Valerie covered her mouth with a delicate hand, her eyes glinting. If this is what scholars look like, perhaps I should try hauling corn too. My arms ached, but my spirit did not bend. I dropped the sack onto the ground with a heavy thud, straightened and met their eyes. At least I earn my bread with my own hands, I said coldly. Better that than leeching off others and calling it ambition. The laughter faltered. Nate's smirk wavered. I stepped closer, my voice low but cutting. You mock me now, but remember this moment. One day when I've left this village behind, you'll still be here, shouting in the dirt while I climb higher. The crowd around us grew silent. For the first time I saw Nate's face flush red, not with triumph but with something that looked very much like shame. That evening Grace burst into my house, cheeks flushed. Clara, I stood up to my parents today. They said I was wasting time and I told them no. I told them I'm taking the exam no matter what. Her voice shook but her eyes were shining. I hugged her tightly. That's it. That's the fire I've been waiting to see. She laughed nervously. I think I almost fainted after saying it. But when I remembered you facing Nate and Valerie without fear, I thought if Clara can do it, so can I. Hearing that, my chest swelled with pride. This was what I had wanted, to give her strength where before she had only known despair. A week later, our homeroom teacher, Mr. Zhang, called me aside. His usual stern face was softer than I'd ever seen it. I've heard the gossip, Clara, he said. But I've also seen your determination. I spoke with the county board. You've been granted a small scholarship. It isn't much, but it should cover some books and fees. I blinked back tears. In my last life I had never been noticed, never given such an opportunity. This time my resolve had drawn someone to my side. Thank you, teacher, I whispered. He placed a hand on my shoulder. Don't thank me. Just prove them all wrong. That night, as I counted the coins in my tin box and tucked Mr. Zhang's scholarship letter beside them, I felt the chains of my last life loosening. I had been mocked, ridiculed and pushed down, but I had also earned, fought back and lifted Grace alongside me. Every insult only fueled me further. This time I would not be bound by the village, by Nate, by Valerie, or by the gossip of small minds. This time I was breaking free. The days blurred together in a rhythm of sweat and ink. Grace and I rose before the roosters, meeting by the well with our books clutched tight. While the village still slept, we recited formulas under the paling stars. At night, when the oil lamps burned low, we bent over our desks, whispering questions and scribbling answers until our eyes stung. Exhaustion became a constant companion, but so did determination. Every equation solved, every character memorized, was another stone laid on the path out of the village. The first monthly exam results came out pinned to the notice board. Students crowded around, jostling to find their names. I pushed through the crowd, my heart steady. In my past life, my name had always hovered at the bottom, easy prey for mockery. But this time, Clara Dawson, rank 12. Gasps rippled through the crowd. She was at the bottom last time, someone whispered. How did she jump so high? And just below mine, Grace Chin, rank 18. Grace's hands trembled as she clutched mine. Claire, we did it. We're not last anymore. I smiled, warmth flooding my chest. This is only the beginning. Behind us, I felt Valerie's glare like daggers. She had ranked 9th, still above me but no longer untouchable. At lunch, Valerie cornered me with her little entourage. She leaned against the wall, her voice dripping with honey and poison. Clara, congratulations. Rank 12 is impressive. For someone like you. But don't get ahead of yourself. You'll never reach Tinghua. You're just enjoying a lucky streak. I met her eyes calmly. Maybe. But even if it's luck, it's more than you ever gave me credit for. And luck, combined with effort, has a way of becoming destiny. Her painted smile faltered just for a moment. That evening, as I carried books home, Nate intercepted me on the road. Clara, he began, softer than I'd ever heard him, I don't know what's happened to you lately. You've changed. You're stronger. Smarter. It's attractive. The boy who once sneered at me now looked at me with a strange hunger. I laughed coldly. Attractive? Nate, don't mistake my determination for something you can own. I'm not your shadow anymore. His face darkened. You think you can do better than me? I don't think, I said, stepping past him. I know. The look on his face, disbelief curdling into fury, was more satisfying than I'd imagined. By the next week, the gossip in the village had shifted tone. Did you hear Claire ranked 12th? That girl might actually make something of herself. Grace too. Maybe those sparrows really can fly. Not everyone was convinced. Some still scoffed, saying it wouldn't last. But doubt had been planted among the mockery, and that alone was a victory. Late one night, Grace fell asleep with her head on the desk, her hair spread across her notes. I draped my shawl over her shoulders and sat watching her breathe. In my last life, this girl had been crushed under the weight of expectations she could never meet. But now her shoulders were straighter, her eyes brighter. She stirred, blinking at me. Claire, promise me something. What? Promise me that no matter what happens, even if I stumble, you won't let me give up. I smiled softly. I promise. But you have to promise me the same. He squeezed my hand. I promise. Of course, Valerie struck back. Soon whispers slithered through the classroom. Clara's only climbing the ranks because she cheats. I confronted her directly during recess. Tell me, Valerie, I said loud enough for the whole room to hear. If I'm cheating, why don't you prove it? Or is it easier to spread rumors than to admit you're afraid I might surpass you? The class erupted in gasps. Valerie's face flushed crimson. She snapped her book shut and stormed out, her followers scrambling after her. I sat back down, my heart pounding. But inside, triumph blazed. As weeks turned into months, the tide was shifting. We were no longer the village fools, the girls doomed to fail. Grace and I were climbing step by step against every sneer, every rumor, every attempt to drag us down. And for the first time I could see it clearly, the horizon beyond the village gleaming with possibility. This time I was not surviving. This time I was rising. The days leading up to the exam passed in a haze of ink and exhaustion. Grace and I studied until our vision blurred, quizzing each other by lamplight while the cicadas screamed outside. I drank bitter tea to stay awake. She pinched her arm until it bruised. Each night we collapsed at our desks, faces buried in books, and each morning we rose before dawn to begin again. The weight of 2 lives pressed against my shoulders. This was more than an exam. It was proof that fate could be rewritten, that sacrifice was not in vain. On the night before we left for the county testing hall, the village gathered at the well. Their voices drifted through the summer air, thick with mockery. Clara Dawson still thinks she'll enter Tinghua. Grace Chin too. Those girls will come back with their heads bowed, you'll see. What a waste of their parents' money. Better to have married them off. I stood among them, head high, while Grace trembled at my side. Finally I spoke. Tomorrow we'll sit the exam. Whether we succeed or fail, at least we dared to try. Tell me which is more pitiful, those who chase the sky or those who never dare to lift their heads. A hush fell over the crowd. For once no one laughed. The testing hall was suffocating, hundreds of students hunched over desks, the air thick with ink and sweat. As I held the pen, my hands shook for a moment. Memories of my past life surged. Failure, humiliation, wasted years. But then I took a deep breath. Not this time. I bent over the paper, and the words poured from me like a river breaking free of a dam. Every night spent studying, every insult swallowed, every vow whispered under the elm tree fueled me. When the final bell rang, I set down my pen, heart pounding but certain. Grace's eyes met mine across the room. She smiled weakly and I nodded. We had given everything. The weeks dragged on like years. The whole village watched us with cruel anticipation, waiting for the moment our dreams would shatter. Valerie smirked every time we passed. Nate strutted, boasting loudly that I'd come crawling back to him when my little fantasy collapsed. But I no longer bowed my head. I held Grace's hand tighter, whispering, "Wait. Just wait." The day arrived. The results were posted at the county hall. Students swarmed the board, their shouts filling the air. My eyes scanned the sheet and stopped. Clara Dawson, admitted to Tsinghua University. My breath caught. My hands trembled. For a heartbeat, the world went silent, then rushed back in a roar of disbelief. And there, just a few lines below, Grace Chin, admitted to Capital City University. We clung to each other, laughing and crying at once. We had done it. Against every whisper, every sneer, every chain, we had done it. When we returned, the village was quiet. Those who had mocked us avoided our eyes. Whispers replaced laughter. Envy, awe, disbelief. She really did it. Tsinghua, can you believe it? Even my parents wept when they held the acceptance letter. Our daughter, my father said hoarsely, has flown. But not everyone stayed silent. Nate cornered me near the schoolyard, his arrogance cracked into desperation. Clara, he pleaded, I was wrong. I see it now, you're extraordinary. Come back to me. Together we can leave this village. You need me. I looked at him for a long moment, then laughed softly. Nate, you're right about one thing. I am extraordinary. But I don't need you. I never did. His face twisted, red with humiliation. Valerie appeared then, her parasol trembling in her grip. This isn't possible. Clara Dawson, you were supposed to fail. You were supposed to stay in the mud where you belong. I turned to her calmly. And you were supposed to be untouchable. Yet here we are. I stepped past them, my head high, Grace at my side. At the edge of the schoolyard, I paused and looked back one last time. You both tried to chain me here. But the truth is simple, sparrows can fly. And this sparrow is done crawling in the dirt. Their faces burned with fury and shame as I walked away, the acceptance letter clutched in my hand, the future stretching bright and unbroken before me. The end.